very true in a part of history that's one thing that we do not want to forget. We have here in New England probably the greatest legacy ever as far as auto racing goes. We've also had some of the greatest drivers. They've gone on either to Indianapolis or to Florida or the Winston Cup circuit, Nextel Cup, whatever you want to call it, and they've made us proud. We're not here to talk about Winston Cup or anything else today. We're here to talk about Richard Armstrong. Well, first of all, when one mentions Richard Armstrong, the first thing you think of, well, he owned the car that Jeff Bodine won 55 races in 1978. That is very true, and it's an all-time record that was set and probably will never be broken. But Richard Armstrong is not only a car owner. I think his greatest legacy was his foresight back in the 70s of what modified racing should be and how the racer should be treated. Just to step back a little bit, Armstrong began his racing career as a car owner in 1969 when he bought the M2 from Mike Scrivani. And not until I read Bones's book did I know that, Lou Boyd's book rather, that Ollie Silver was actually Dick Armstrong's original choice as a driver. But Ollie, being the free spirit that he was, he wanted to do his own thing and control his own destiny, and he respectfully declined. Well, anyway, Dick hired Freddie Schultz, and in the first year, they won the Norwood Track Championship. Well, in the course of racing at Norwood in 1969, they also raced at Thompson. Stafford was on Friday night, Norwood on Saturday night, Thompson on Sundays. At the time, the racing costs were beginning to escalate somewhat, but the purses weren't. All three tracks were drawing good crowds, and Armstrong, at the urging of some of his peers, got everybody together and formed what was to become the New England Drivers and Owners Club. It would, instead of each individual complaining about this and about that, they could complain in a group and maybe put some muscle behind it. Well, they went to the promoters at Stafford, Thompson, and Norwood to request a purse increase. They were like running for $500 to win at the time. If you finished out of the top three, you lost money. Does that sound familiar to people who race today? But anyway, at the time, a lot of car owners were hurting and they were beginning to fall off. Tires were going up, just like everything else. Well, NEDOC, with Dick Armstrong leading them, approached all three promoters and said, we want more. All three refused. So probably in the history of New England as a group, for the first time, a strike was called. Stafford was shut down, Norwood was shut down, and Thompson was shut down. While they were shut down, Armstrong and his Vice President Bobby V, and I believe Mr. DeSaro, Fred DeSaro Sr. was the secretary, met with these promoters. Well, finally Stafford came around, and then Norwood came around, and Thompson, he just shut down. He said that's it, he was all done for a while. But when things got back to normal, Thompson eventually did come back around, and everybody was back racing again. Well, Armstrong was basically a man of his own means. A lot of people voiced their resentment because of his sometimes flamboyancy, and he wasn't afraid to call a spade what he felt like. And a lot of people were jealous because of the money that he was beginning to spend. Well, if you know the real story behind it, you couldn't really fault the guy for it because he was self-made. Him and his wife started a costume jewelry business in a second-floor apartment up in Massachusetts. And with their hard work, they turned it into a multi-million-dollar business. And when Dick Armstrong decided he liked racing, he put his all into it with his wife and his family behind him. That was his beer money, whatever you want to call it. Well, after the years with Freddie Schultz, he made a couple of trips down to Martinsville, and he took a real liking to this red number 11 that he saw was cleaning house down there. And at the time, that was the ultimate weapon in modified racing. That was the Tant Mitchell Coupe. Well, in the fall of 1971, he bought that car and brought it back home. Hop Harrington drove it for a few races with a limited amount of success. Well, then, the following year, I think I got to see two of the best races I ever saw Armstrong cars run. One of them was a consolation. It was down at Pocono. Hop Harrington had attempted to qualify the car, and it blew up. Well, then it got rained out. Well, during the week, I don't know how they made the connection, but Dick Armstrong got hooked up with a virtually unknown driver from Seekonk by the name of Ronnie Bouchard. Ronnie Bouchard had never been on a track any bigger than Seekonk. Well, needless to say, they went down to Pocono the following week, and Ronnie Bouchard started dead last in that race, the consolation race. 20 laps later, Ronnie was leading, pulling away. What a show he put on coming up through traffic. Armstrong was on top of the world just from winning a consi. Well, in the feature race, they also started in the rear, and he started coming up through, and he had the unfortunate occurrence of blowing a tire and basically destroyed the car into the first turn. Well, they figured, well, they'd never see Ronnie Bouchard again. He's had enough of him. Well, a few weeks later, Hop Harrington and Dick's brother and a lot of his friends rebuilt that car, and they went to Trenton. And they put Ronnie Bouchard in that car again. Well, this time there was no blown tires. Ronnie Bouchard finished a real strong second that day, right behind Jeff Bodine. Well, Ronnie went his own way, and he got hooked up with Bob Johnson, as you well know, and he went on to stardom and whatever. Well, Dick still had the coupe, and then he had Hoppy build him a Pinto. First with Gene Bergen in it, and a couple of other drivers. And at the same time, Ray Hendrick, who was down south riding the Tant Mitchell Modified, got out of Modifieds, and they were just racing sportsmen, so Dick would bring Hendrick up to run his Modified in some special events. Well, at the urging of Hendrick, he gave Dick the idea to put Jeff Bodine in that car. Oh boy, everybody knows what happened after that. There was still a lot of resentment. A lot of people resented it. But I'll tell you, when Bodine was in that Armstrong car, every promoter in this New England area made money. Because half the people came to see him win, and the other half came to see him crash. But no matter what it took, Armstrong had that car there every week. Once 1978 came and went, Bodine decided he wanted to go down south and pursue other things. And Armstrong was kind of tapering off. But then there was another crisis coming up. It was really getting expensive. So he had the idea of maybe it would be a good idea to run just special events for these high-paying modifieds. But nobody wanted to hear it. They did run a few shows here and there, but as far as putting on a touring type of status, NASCAR didn't want to hear it, and the promoters didn't want to give up their weekly fare. Also, at the same time, there was a tire crisis. Tires were getting out of sight. They were burning them up left and right. So Armstrong spearheaded what was to become a track tire at the time. Well, a track tire cost him dearly because of the fact that the Treasury in NEDOC was just about depleted. He funded most of the litigation and everything else that went with it, because there was quite a bit of litigation on it, through his own. But when it was all said and done, if we turn around and we look today, the modifieds, as we know them now, even if the tracks are on track tires, there is a modified tour. So I think that he did have the foresight. In addition to being a car owner, he had the foresight to look into the future and what he thought would be the best, and it ended up being the best for modified racing. So I think Dick Armstrong is very well deserving of being in this Hall of Fame. And the most important thing that he did, while all this was going on, he kept his family with him all the time. His wife, and his kids, and his brothers. They raced together, and that's how they stayed together. Unfortunately, Dick was diagnosed with cancer, and he passed away. And he's not here with us today to enjoy this. But in his absence, we do have his family here, and I believe his son Mark is going to come up and accept his induction plaque, if you would, please.
We would all like to thank and accept this honor, which is very much an honor. In my father's memory, on behalf, you all met my family, my sister Kim, Diane, my mother Carol, Rick. We'd all also like to thank New England Autos Racing. I'm not sure if it's New England Antique Auto Racing or Auto Racing. And President Alfini, thank you for inviting us. The selection committee, class of 2005 inductees and past Hall of Famers. And also past drivers, Bugsy Stevens, Georgie Summers. Thank you for coming. Very special thanks to George Brockman and also Kyle Oberg for bringing the modifieds. Kyle's, I talked to him for about a half hour a week ago, and he's in love with that car. He's got it in the heated garage, and I couldn't think of anybody better to own it because he absolutely loves it. He'll never sell it, so don't even ask, he said. Talk to him a little bit later, I hope. I didn't get to talk to him yet. I was sitting down last night and I was thinking about what to say or what to write, and I didn't know what to say. I don't want to brag about my father or whatnot, and a lot of people think it's a lot of money or whatnot, but it's a lot of hard work. So I started thinking, and a lot of memories come up. About being a family sport, absolutely. Racing family is probably the best people you're going to meet in your life. You go to a football game, you see fights break out left and right. You go to a racing, and everybody's happy. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We go to Stafford, me and my sister, we were probably 10, 7. We'd be out in the track. My parents would be in the pits. And they'd come up at the heat. We'd meet at the, going into turn 1 up high. That was our seat every week. We watched the races. Later on, go down to Victory Circle most of the time. Go up to the clubhouse, party, run around like crazy. 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd finally put the chairs together, lay down, take a little nap, or go to sleep. Wake up in our beds the next day like crazy. Actually woke up early afternoon, I think it was. Saturday night, did the same thing. Go to Riverside, Seekonk. Sunday, go to Thompson. Beautiful memories. I mean, my father worked hard all week long, so you didn't get to see him. You get to see him at the racetrack. You get to see him excel. Do what he loved to do. Just great memories. He had a lot of sayings, a lot of one-liners. One that sticks in my mind, and it's kind of fitting for today. He said, something bad happened. I wrecked my streetcar or get in a fight with someone. Or he'd say, Mark, 100 years from now won't make any difference. I said, you know what? You're right. But today he's wrong. Because 100 years from now, it might make a difference. We got the Hall of Fame, people walking through that trailer, hopefully a museum by then, and they look up and see Dick Armstrong's name and what he's done in modified racing, what we all have done. I wouldn't trade modified racing for anything. Great people. Thank you very much.